Here I come from my front porch. I know, I tripped you up. It's supposed to say hello from my front porch, but I wanted to do, here I come from my front porch. I'm even wearing, even though it's a little dreary outside, I'm wearing this bright blue because it's kind of reminiscent of the shirts the Monkees wore. Why so much about the Monkees, might you say? I'm so glad you asked, because you see, today here in Des Moines, we started to get a little bit of snow. Now, fortunately, it's let up for right now and nothing accumulated. We're lucky here. I hear other parts of the state not quite so lucky. And I know that there are other states that got some snow too. So I'm hoping that our luck hangs out a bit longer and we can deal without the snow for now. But because it snowed, it seemed like a good time to talk about something that just happened just within the last few days. A new album was released by my favorite group, the Monkees. That's right, the Monkees. 52 years after they first burst on the scene in 1966, the Monkees are still releasing new music. And when I say new music, I mean really new music. Let me tell you who wrote the songs on this. Now, there's some songs that are by traditional artists. I'll discuss what that means in a moment. But check this out. I had to list them out here because I will admit I'm not personally familiar with all of them, but you folks will know them. Here are the songwriters for the songs on the Monkees' latest album. We have Weezer's Rivers Cuomo, XTC's Andy Partridge, Death Cab for Cuties' Ben Gibbard, Fountains of Wayne's Adam Schlesinger, REM's Peter Buck, -5 Scott McCoy or McCoffey. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced, but if you know him, you know what that is. And there's even a novelist named Michael Chabon who contributed with one of the songs too. That's quite a lineup of songwriters. That's some pretty incredible stuff. Now, some of those folks contributed to the Monkees new album a couple of years ago called Good Times. That was an album that made it, I think, to number 14 on the charts, which is phenomenal. It was their 50th anniversary, and they did this album, and several of those individuals wrote songs for that album too, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely great. Now, that album, interestingly enough, if you just bought the regular album, you had good songs, but there were 4 or 5 other bonus tracks that didn't come on the regular album. But depending on if you bought it through other channels, like if you bought the CD at Target or this, there might be an extra track that was included. Of course, me being the fan that I am, I tracked down all the bonus tracks, and so if you listen to the album on my playlist on my iTunes, then you actually hear what I consider to be the complete album, which is the released version and all the bonus tracks. So they're all there. But anyway, so I love that album. It's really great, and they even had included Davy Jones on it by going back and pulling a track that actually had played on the TV show, but was never released on an album officially. And so they kind of spruced up, cleaned up, and put it on there. And so that's Davy Jones's inclusion on that album. But the rest of it was all the current contemporary Monkees, Mickey, Peter, and Mike, and they all had great contributions to it. Now, Peter only had one song on the actual released album, which is kind of the way it was when the Monkees were around. Peter didn't get very many songs on any of the albums, for that matter. But on the bonus tracks, 2 of those bonus tracks featured Peter. Now, they're a little trippy, a little out there, and so that's why they didn't make it probably to the mass album. But I'm thrilled to have them on my version of the full album, because I think it's very representative of the group, and I think Peter has some great tunes there. And so with the bonus tracks, there's a good mix of Mickey, Mike, and Peter on those tracks. So I'm talking about the previous one so much because on the new album, things are a bit different, and there's reasons for that. Now this is the new album. Yes, indeed, the Monkees have released their very first Christmas album. Hence the reason that the snow was so important, and the snow was an interesting reminder. So the Monkees now have released a Christmas album for the first time ever. Now, they've done Christmas songs before, single songs, but they've never released an entire full album. Needless to say, I had it on pre-order, and I was thrilled to get it when it was released. I've now listened to it 2, maybe even 3 times. And here's my feedback on it. Here's my review. Now, it's going to surprise some of you because again, you know what a huge Monkee fan I really am. And so you're going to be maybe surprised to find out that there are parts of the album I'm not quite so fond of. And I say that somewhat hesitantly because part of the reason I'm not fond of them simply is because of the age that the Monkees themselves now are becoming, and let me qualify that. So I'm not just making an ageism kind of statement, but their age is starting to impact their ability to do the vocals, and so that's where some of it is not as entertaining and actually a little bit sad in some ways. But before I get to that, let me back up and say there are some classic traditional Christmas songs on here. They include Davy Jones using some tracks of his from actually a few years ago, 15, 20 years ago actually. Davy started work on a Christmas album. Now he never officially released it, although a Christmas album eventually was put together of these tracks and released, but they weren't actually polished, finished ones, if that makes sense. They were only partially there. Well, for this album, they took a couple of those tracks that he had worked on previously and added all new music to them, updated music, and it really gives it a nice solid sound. So those tracks, they sound very good. You can clearly tell it's a Davy who's younger than the rest of the band, but I mean the previous album, Davy was 50 years younger than the rest of the band. So this Davy is at least closer to the rest of the band. And they're good, but they're traditional Christmas songs. It's just Davy singing his rendition of these Christmas songs. Mike Nesmith also only has 2 songs on this album, and they're both traditional Christmas songs. And I gotta say, one of them I'm not really a big fan of, and the reason being, it just doesn't have the Mike Nesmith energy that you expect from his songs. Now, it's not just because of him getting older, it's also because earlier this year, he was doing a tour with Mickey. The 2 of them were just going out doing some appearances, and he had to cancel the end of the tour, the last 4 or 5 locations, because he wasn't feeling well, and when he went in and got checked, they found out that he immediately needed quadruple bypass surgery, and so that's serious stuff. And so he has been recuperating from that. But he wanted to be part of this project, but he was unable to be a part of it to the degree that he was part of the Good Times album. So his contributions really are just the 2 standalone songs, although I feel like I can hear him doing some harmonies, some backups on some other tracks. Maybe they just have a studio singer who sounds kind of like Mike does now. It's possible, but really, near as I can tell, I can only confirm that Mike has these 2 songs, and one of them just is I think it's flat in my opinion. It just doesn't get there. The other one's okay. It's the Christmas song. The one I like is the Christmas song. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. And it's an interesting Mike Nesmith take on that. But in both of the songs, you can tell how weak he is. So either he recorded them before the heart stuff happened, in which case he was weak because he either heart, or he did them not long after he had the surgery and he was still recovering. But you can definitely tell in his vocals that he is weak. He is not the Mike Nesmith that we heard even just 2 years ago on the Good Times album. And so that's kind of sad, kind of disappointing. And again, I'm not just being critical. Oh, it's disappointing. It doesn't sound blah, blah, blah. It's disappointing that he would be in that condition. It's sad to see someone that you really enjoy, that you appreciate, having such stuff like that happen. But Peter Tork is in no better situation. In fact, I said Mike and Mickey had been touring. Well, the reason they've been touring on their own without Peter is because Peter's been dealing with his own health issues. Now, he hasn't been, we don't really know what that is. We know that he had some cancer issues recently in his throat and his mouth, had to have some surgery and some reconstruction, and then had to learn how to speak and sing all over again. But he's did a fantastic job of that. No idea if his health issues now have to do with the reoccurrence of any of the cancer or whatever it might be. But still, he's been absent, and the fans have noticed. He recently released a statement to say that he's doing well, he's feeling good, he's feeling strong, and he's actually be watching. He's got some appearances that he's doing with some other individuals, some little isolated events, but that he is keeping his schedule minimal because he is dealing with some health issues. And so because of that, Peter also only contributes one song on this new Christmas album. Now it's kind of fun. He does "Angels We Have Heard on High" and he does it with his banjo. And it's so Peter. But you can again tell in listening to him that it's not the same Peter from the album 2 years ago. It's Peter who is obviously weak. He's obviously dealing with some stuff. And so again, that's saddening. But Peter actually is the oldest member of the group, and Davey was the youngest. So it was so surprising that he was the first to go, because he was the youngest. He was physically active. He was a vegetarian. He was all the things that supposedly are supposed to mean he'd outlast the rest of them. But no, not what happened. But anyway. So Peter only has the one song, and it's good. But Mike and Peter, they only have those 3 songs combined, and I don't really hear them on the other songs. Davey has the 2 recycled songs, basically, that were found and then repackaged, which again is good. And I understand there's no other way to really have Davey on there. I'm thrilled that they included him. I'm thrilled that they don't just leave him out. They don't just say, well, he's gone, so now it's just 3 of us. That they're still including him. But the rest of the album then is all Mickey. And realistically, if you go back and listen to the classic Monkees albums back in the 60s, it was not uncommon that the majority of songs on an album were Mickey, or Mickey and Davey, kind of thing, whatever. But Mickey has always carried a lion's share of the songs. He's always been the lead vocalist. And that's the case on this. And I think the songs are contributed by this list of really great songwriters that I mentioned before. I think they're great. Now, I'm not a big Christmas music person. I should have said that right up front. I'm excited about this album because it's the Monkees. But I'm not a big Christmas music person, big Christmas music guy. I'm just on its own. And so Mickey also does a couple of traditional songs. Like, for example, he does the Paul McCartney one, "Wonderful Christmas Time," which it's okay, but I don't really care for the Monkees doing the Paul McCartney song. It just doesn't do it for me. There's at least one other well-known Christmas song. It's not quite as vintage classic as the Christmas song or "Angels We've Heard on High," things like that. But there's at least another one, recognizable one, that Mickey does that it's like, that just doesn't do it for me either. What I really like on this album, are all of these new songs, the new ones, and those are all Mickey doing all those songs, doing a good job. Although in a lot of the cases, not so much on Mickey's, a few on Mickey's, but on Mike's and on Peter's, you can tell that the voice is a little computerized too, and that's also an indication that they just didn't quite have the richness, the fullness of their voice that they had again just 2 years ago on the Good Times album. And so, while I'm thrilled that there's new Monkee music, and I'm listening to the whole thing, and I've put tracks in on that ever-growing Monkees chronology playlist that keeps expanding on my iPod. But still, there are some tracks on there that I don't think they're as good as some of the others. To a large extent, this is a Mickey Dolenz Christmas album. Let's just be honest. And the reason I say that is because, again, I don't think that either Peter or Mike really are doing much of the background vocals on Mickey's songs. If you heard their voices mixed in there a bit now and again, I think it would feel more like the Monkees. What it feels like really is some of the final albums that the original Monkees did. The last 2 albums, the Monkees Present and the Monkees Instant Replay. Those 2 albums really weren't about the group at all. Peter had left the group at that point. It was just Mike, Mickey, and Davey, and each of them individually just did their own songs, and there was very little involvement from the others in each person's songs, and then they just bundled them together on this album and put it out. And that's kind of the way this Christmas album now feels. It's very isolated. You have the Davey songs, you have the Peter song, you have the Mike songs, and you have the Mickey songs. But none of it really feels Monkees. And that's unfortunate that it has that feel. But I get that if they wanted to release it for Christmas, who knows what's going on with Peter and when he might actually be available. Mike was a wild card. He wanted to be involved, but he obviously couldn't be involved to the level he had been at with the previous album. And so, you go with what you can and you make it work. And from that vantage point, I think the album does work. I think it's great. And I'm thrilled at these new Christmas songs, because I don't know that, when you're listening to the radio and the Christmas songs come up and they have all of these songs, the same Angels We Have Heard on High, here, however many different variations. Now there's a Peter Tork on the banjo playing Angels We Have Heard on High, and so that could go in the mix. Yeah. Look, another Angels We Have Heard on High. I think it's really more exciting that they've got these other completely new songs by some really top-notch musicians. And those are the songs I hope make it into the radio, make an impact, because those are the different, unique ones that you haven't heard before. There's some really fun stuff in there. So anyway, there you go. That's my review of the Monkees' new Christmas album. It's called Monkees Christmas Party. Where is it? Yeah, up here in the top corner, up here. It's available right now for purchase on iTunes. I'm sure it's probably available on Amazon and everywhere else where you can get music kind of stuff too. So anyway, there you go. There's my review of the Monkees' latest album. I just love saying anyway, because for all the naysayers, they're like, the Monkees just flash in the pan. They're just prefab four. They're a made-up group. They are the bizarre tale of four actors brought together to portray a group that wanted to be a famous band, who outgrew the TV show and outlived it by decades, so that they were brought together to pretend to be a group of guys that wanted to be a band, and they became a band who to this day is still beloved for the music they are still releasing. Come on, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, get your act together. These guys need nominated. And with that, I'll see you next time from my front porch.